Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. This week, a very special guest, one of the great trainers of New England, and not just New England, of wrestling as a whole, one of the greats in the ring and out of the ring. He's the mind, of course, as well in this great business from Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center. Please welcome Mr. Mike Hollow. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. A long time since the last time that you and I sat down and kicked the tires and talked. So, this should be good.
Absolutely. We're just talking off camera about how it's probably been, 20 years or more since we've done that first interview on the couch at Walter's school. And, seems like yesterday in some ways, but it has been a long time. So it'll be nice to catch up and see all that you've done since then, for sure.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out and being able to do this. And it's all good.
And we'll talk in detail about the training center, of course, and the WWE ID program, of course, that you're a part of. We'll touch on that towards the end of the interview. Let's kind of rewind to the very beginning first. Growing up as a kid or a young adult, when was the first time that you ever discovered pro wrestling? Do you have any early memories, and who were some of your favorites growing up?
Yeah, distinctly, Joe, that 5-year-old kid sitting home on Saturday morning glued to the TV. And, here comes that, first pro wrestling, show that I'm able to watch on TV. And ever since then, just being fascinated and engaged and intrigued. And so, here it is 30 years later, still doing, enthralled and excited to be doing with what I'm doing and being a part of it.
Was there a certain moment where you decided that you wanted to give it a go and get involved yourself, or did it just kind of naturally occur?
No, it was always something that was of interest. And I think for me, after the 2 years that I'd spent on, the ring crew and production crew of WWF at the time, and now WWE, it's just with where, a couple of those guys that I was around said, geez, you should think about, going to Kowalski's. And, the good thing is Walter had a school in Malden, Mass, and I grew up in Saugus. So it was the next town over. So it was an easy go, but it was certainly an intimidating day climbing those stairs, first time, dealing with Walter.
And who were some of the other students that were in your same class of Walter School before you went on to become head trainer?
Geez, we had Perry Satin, John Cronus, Tony Roy, Hunter Hearst Hemley, Paul Levesque, who's now running the entire, WWE. He was part of that group as well. The, Bulldozer, Tim McNeely, Jim McCarthy, the Cowboy, my tag team partner. So a slew of different names and all great workers.
And let's talk about the styles of pro wrestling. Obviously, everybody brings a different style to the table, and there's so many different, styles to work with. IWF specifically, Walter Killer Kowalski's IWF, 1994. Let's go way back to 94. You worked, we're just going to bring up 3 random matches, 3 completely different styles. Trey, the smooth operating gangsta, the big Ron Reese, who would go on to WCW, of course, and Mad Dog Richard. Having been in the ring with 3 athletes like that, what's it like adapting to the styles? And maybe if you can give some advice on how you go about adapting to so many different styles.
Yeah, all 3 different personalities, in-ring style, which was all uniquely different from all of those 3 performers, and just really trying to find out with what their niches is and how do we put that together with where we can create an interesting story with where we're enthralling the fans and bringing the most out of with what we're Walter was asking us to do at that time. One of the things Walter was a big advocate of duration of long matches. So, it was tough at times to do those 15, 20-minute mark, matches coming out of the gate.
And, fast forward 2 years from there, 1996, continuing on with the IWF, you work with Brian Walsh. Brian's looked at as one of the greats to come out of the New England scene. What was it like working with Brian Walsh in the ring?
Absolutely phenomenal. And you hit the nail on the head. Why he never ended up getting signed to WWF was, kind of a head scratcher, but just a wonderful talent, wonderful guy, and just really a step ahead of everybody at that particular time from a development standpoint, and just really knew his way in and around the ring, and really brought the most out of me when I had the opportunity to work with him. It was a great experience.
You'd go on to WWF Wrestling Challenge. It was a dark match, 1995, the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. You'd wrestle Spellbinder. He was doing Fantasio at the time. And from there, you'd go on a Shotgun Saturday Night 2 years later with World Wrestling Federation once again. You've worked with WWF so many times over the years, countless times. You've worked with the DOA and, just so many different athletes. What's it like going out there, though, for the very first time for WWF and feeling that audience and being in those arenas?
Completely a different atmosphere. And I think one of the things that stood out to me the most was the physicality piece. We thought things were, here it is, 6'2", 240, can move around that ring pretty good. But now you get into the ring with those guys, 6'3", 6'4", 275. They're just fast. I mean, I couldn't get over how quick, the talent was performance wise, and just at a different level. But definitely brings them, the best out of you from a development standpoint and understanding standpoint from with where they're at and with what they're looking for.
And you're wrestling all over New England and beyond on the independent scene. You're wrestling for the World Wrestling Federation as well. So you're seeing different styles of venues, whether it be smaller venues or the big arenas. Did you have any favorite to wrestle in over the years, whether it be small or large?
The Waltham IBW Hall, that was always a fun place to work. The Armories was always exciting. That was, an intimate atmosphere. And of course, the Fleet Center in Boston, homegrown kid, that was always, you put 20,000, 17,000 people in there. And it's totally different from you're saying to yourself, geez, how did I end up here? So I guess the moral of the story is anything is possible when you put your mind to it.
And when you're there for WWF, who are some of the agents that you've worked with that have been assigned to your matches over the years?
Predominantly was Tony Guerrier. If I remember correctly, Tony handled a lot of the, enhancement stuff, was the gentleman that I dealt with the most over, my time there.
Okay. So, greatest challenge in the industry, not necessarily in the ring, but what would you say is the greatest challenge of being a part of the wrestling industries thus far?
Everyone has a different personality, and neither from a teaching standpoint or from an entertainer standpoint, is just being able to pull the most out of the individuals that you're working with, whether from in ring or from a development, from trying to find their way in the world of wrestling for, having their matches, along those lines. I think sometimes can be challenging because everyone's uniquely different from their learning styles and understanding of the business. And, so that there's a lot of different complexities that come into play with how do we, get everybody on the same page? Because ultimately you have to be selfless because it's about the people that are coming to see you perform and being the best dance partner you can be with where people want to come back and see more of you and with what you're trying to create, in the ring.
And obviously you're training on an elite level now, no pun intended, but, early on, let's go to your early training when you were Walter's, head trainer for the school. How did that come about? When did you transition from in-ring to also doing the training as well?
So basically, that kind of came about with where I was going to Connecticut and working on the warehouse with Dr. Tom and doing the dojo shows with Bruce Pritchard and Freddie Spotter at the time, and kind of really getting my feet and hands involved and that type of stuff, and then just trying to take back some of the philosophies that I was seeing that WWF at the time was incorporating, and bringing that back to the schools. So again, everybody is getting a dose of what the the major leagues are looking for. And to be perfectly honest with you, just the privilege alone of being able to coach or teach at Walter School is something that I take ever so seriously, and just such a privilege for him to trust me to continue on with his lineage and his legacy, to try to keep the business alive, and more so his heritage and with what he had created. For the 30 years or 50 years that he was involved in the business itself was, something I don't take lightly, and certainly very well appreciative of it.
And for those fans that are tuning in now that aren't familiar with Walter Killer Kowalski, maybe some of our younger fans, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Walter, what he was like behind the scenes, and, what he has done for the wrestling world and some of the guys that he's produced, of course, guys and girls.
Well, one of the big things, I think Walter, just his aura and his personality, right? One of the things that's really interesting and unique is Walter was a top heel for years in the wrestling business. But behind the scenes, that very few people that were able to get close to him as I had the opportunity to. He wanted to be known as an angel, kind, gentle, warm, giving. So that was the side. So there was two personalities of Walter. Put him in front of a crowd of people, the switch goes on. He becomes a larger than life character. Just and how he changed the business basically because of the speed with what he brought to the table, his viciousness, his sense of realism and intensity was just over the top and just kind of really created a different dynamic of how wrestling was looked at. And, all the matches that he had around the world and the people that he worked with. And if you were known for training at Kowalski's, you got a stamp of approval in every locker room that you walked into. And this is a huge piece. You were accepted. And if you weren't that guy, I mean, sometimes it can be rough. Walter's name carried a hell of a lot of weight in the business for being respected, and rightfully so.
Sure. And was there any individual, whether male or female, back in the day in the school? Obviously you've had the in-ring ability, but you've also had the eye and the mind behind it, and that's been something important. So, has there ever been anybody that you saw right in, off the bat, and you said, "Man, this person's going to make it," and they went on to bigger things? Did you ever, you know?
Obviously, Hunter. I mean, there was something unique about him when he walked in the door at Kowalski's. 6'4", 275. Unbelievable build. Perry Satin, right? Perry just had that tenacity with where he wasn't going to take no for an answer, and he found his way. John Cronus. I've come across a slew of guys that I've had the opportunity to work with, where there's something unique about them that's kind of with where that they're going to end up in that next level of growth and development and being on a large stage. I don't want to name them all, but and then the other thing that too about Kowalski's, not only was it a wrestling school, but also even with Elite, or it's a life school. I mean, Walter and I were just really trying to put guys and girls in a better position, not only in the ring but outside the ring as well, to go about their everyday lives, so they could be successful and have that confidence. And that's the other great thing about pro wrestling schools is that we just watch people flourish and grow in so many different ways, and that's a lot of that's not known enough. But I think one of the really things that we're proud of, or that I'm proud of over my duration of being able to teach.
And it's always fun to see, the progression of pro wrestling in general and superstars, and, where they start and where they end up. And you've been a part of different gimmicks over the years. Obviously, most well known as Mike Hollow. You've been Mike DiBiase, the Annihilators, Seek and Destroy. Why don't you kind of tell us just the history of what you've accomplished so far in ring?
In ring. Well, I think I wanted to be known as where I was just a solid worker and just was really had the opportunity or the ability to pull the most out of who I was working with with where we could go on and tell a story that was people believed and they thought was real and engaged, and safe worker. Knew my way around the ring, understood the psychology of being able to put things together with whoever I was working with for the which was best for the business, and just all those little things I think really mattered to me with where those sometimes are the missing ingredients that really help an individual from a talent progression get to the next level if those things aren't being taught or brought to the forefront, I should say.
And going back to 1998, New Hampshire to be exact, you worked with the Iron Sheik. Any memories of working with Sheiky?
Yeah, funny story. Sheiky and I and Nikolai Volkov are sitting in the locker room, and I'm sitting between both of them. And Sheiky goes to Nikolai, "Hey, green guy, he okay?" And Nikolai goes, "Yep, green guy okay. He's a Kowalski boy. He's okay." So we're having the match, and I don't know, we're probably halfway through the match, and I go to pick up Sheiky for a body slam. And I certainly don't want to dump him and put him down in a bad spot because, his reputation precedes itself. And so I got him up 3/4 away. And Sheiky at the time had put on a little bit of weight. And I'm trying to make the turn. Sheiky, you got to help me here. You got to help me here. Finally, he was able to get him up and give him a body slam and take care of him. But that was an interesting day, an interesting match. And I tell people that story, they go, "No way." I said, "Yeah, got to work with the Iron Sheik."
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You've shown that you've worked with such, like I said, a vast variety of superstars over the years. Another one to come out of New England, Big Rick Fuller, 1998. You worked one on one, but obviously you've worked with him countless times over the years. Memories of Rick Fuller.
The hand, just yeah, the chops. Talented kid, big guy, just solid worker. Just really had that great in ring presence. Had a great run in WCW. Wonderful person outside the ring as well. So true class act guy.
Another big part of New England for such a long time was Super Bad, Steve Bradley, the late great Steve Bradley. Any memories you could share with the fans of Steve?
Not really. I didn't really have an opportunity to work a lot with him over the years. I think we might have done some different trips together and stuff like that, but not really. No, I can't say I have.
And staying in shape over the years, all these years, you've always been in great shape. What was your training regimen? What did that look like on paper?
Just trying to be in the gym 3 or 4 times a week. Utilizing good workouts, being educated to with where how to lift properly, cardio wise, diet wise, and just realizing that at some point the wear and tear on our bodies is going to catch up, and just trying to eat right. Just good healthy habits along the way. And here it is. I started in 1992, and it's 2026, 58 years old, and I'm still getting off my feet. I don't know if I should be, but I am. But my body's been good to me, thank God.
Now, you locked it up with Double J Jeff Jarrett in 1998, both in Whitman, Massachusetts and Lynn, Massachusetts, multiple occasions. What was your greatest takeaway working with Jeff Jarrett?
Just being able to sit and talk with him and put the pieces of the match together, and understanding the psychology with where we needed the people to be at certain times, and watching how that evolved from the locker room to the ring, and how the reactions that he was talking about with what we wanted to create were able to become to the forefront. And then, more so when the referee counted three with what we were able to get from the audience. But just from an experience standpoint and learning standpoint was a big thing. It's just sitting and listening and understanding, and the takeaways, so when those learning opportunities come to be able to work with a talent like that, they really resonate with you. And one of the things I've always tried to share is those experiences with where I've had the opportunity to teach with others, and talk about, sometimes you just got to sit and listen and understand your place and with what's trying to be created, because there's really a wealth of knowledge that's sitting in front of you to kind of really put you in a better way if you allow it.
Right. And for the fans who aren't familiar, why don't we talk about the WFA, your memories of WFA?
WFA at the time, for not currently, but before, remember there was that rivalry between Chaotic Wrestling and WFA.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting now with where, I'm with the WFA, and for Chaotic, I spent, 10 years from 2000, 2010, Jamie and I, and, with what we had created with CTC and so forth. But, yeah, we had that rivalry going back and forth, and it was always interesting. And, one of the things I'll share with you, Jamie and I said, we'll steer the ship the direction that we want to go. And we were tied in with the office, so we understood with what they were looking for and with what our responsibilities were. So we just kind of went about our business, and, here it is, WFA's back alive, and I'm heavily involved doing, working with these guys, Scott, and, that team up there. So you just never know with where you're going to end up.
Yeah, things come full circle sometimes, and it's great. It's great to see that, and everybody's thriving. And, let's talk about Jim Kettner, a promoter, obviously based out of Delaware, of course, the big Super 8 tournaments, but also played a pivotal role here in the New England area for quite some time with the talent exchange, with Chaotic Wrestling relationship. What's your relationship been with Jim over the years?
I love Kettner. He's a wonderful human being, right up there with Walter. Many of late night dinners, just sitting down in a booth at a Denny's, talking about wrestling, sharing talent, just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, there's a guy, I think if I was to remember correctly, 40 plus years of promoting the ECWA, the Super 8 tournament, a gentleman that's well respected within the wrestling industry from WWE, WWF at the time. He worked closely with Jim Ross over the years as well, with the Haas brothers. I can't say enough good things about him. And I haven't talked to him in a little bit, but when we do, those conversations usually last anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. He's a tough guy to get off the phone.
Great individual indeed, and so
Yes.
so important to the wrestling business for sure. You talked about the greatest challenge within the industry. On the flip side of that, what has the most rewarding been for you personally within the industry?
Uh, I, well, just, I mean, think about for the 30 plus years and the amount of people that I've been able to, interact with. And sometimes those interactions have been challenging at times, but for the most part, very positive. And, one of the things that Walter had shared with me and others that were close to me was that you always be in the mindset of that you want to give back to put the business in a better place. And I think that's really one of the things that I want to hang my hat on is that I could keep everything that I've learned over the years to myself, but the business wouldn't be in a position to flourish and grow and educate and teach. Because look, it's difficult doing with what we do, and if someone's not helping you along or pulling you up by the ears to point you in the right direction, sometimes missteps could be career ending or where because the only thing that you have in our business is your name. So understanding the importance of that and just being able to give back, and I think is the biggest thing, and realizing that it's a privilege to do with what I do. It's not a right, and I think so. I think that's the biggest piece.
And it must be difficult as a trainer. The wrestling business obviously changes. It changes from time to time. You've been a part of several different eras, so being there at the forefront and seeing some of these changes. Why don't you mention some of the changes you've seen in the industry during your time specifically, and how you've kind of dealt with them and tackled them?
I think one thing, I remember being a part of a conversation with Walter Kowalski and Pat Patterson at the time back at Walter's old school over in Malden, Mass. And, they were kind of having the little back and forth, and with where Pat was saying to Walter, Walter, our business is going to evolve. It's going to continue to grow. And if I think back from with when I started in the early 90s to with where we're at now, the production aspect of the wrestling business has gone over the top. It's unbelievable with what we're doing today in terms of production, so forth and so on. But I think one of the things that's always held steadfast that hasn't changed, that's been my stamp for working with talent, is the fundamental pieces with where that will never go away. So for a guy or girl today that gets caught up in the aura of with what they see on TV, but to put yourself in a good position from an opportunity, whether it's on the independent level or WWE or AEW, your fundamentals have to be right with where you're safe and you can take care of the person that you're working with in the ring. So those will never go away, but the production value will continue to evolve and change, and it'll be vastly different 5 years from now as well.
And obviously, you worked with Walter for so many years. What was your biggest takeaway working with Walter?
Um, our relationship of where just with where we were entwined and engaged together. Just God, it's so much. Him giving me the privilege to doing with what I do. Him being a part of the personal stuff in my life at the time, whether it's being around my kids when they were younger, weddings, christenings, birthday parties, taking them to Kowloon's for lunch. The different people that just were always wanted to either shake his hand, ask for autographs. Just someone that was just instrumental to so many, I think, is probably the biggest piece.
And you've worked with so many prominent individuals, both in the ring and behind the scenes in
Mm.
the wrestling world. What would you say was the best piece of advice ever received if you had to choose one?
Take care of your name. Take care of your name
Mm.
because you only have one. And you don't know who knows who or who's going to pick up the phone and say, hey, how's that person? Would they be a good fit within our organization? What value do they bring? Are they dependable? Do they know how to do business? Are they trustworthy? It just, those life lessons, I think, is probably the biggest piece with where, you can be accepted, and because you're doing things both in and out of the ring the right way.
So 1998, going back to the WWA, another promotion that you worked for, the Mongolian, the Bulldozer, and Big Rick Fuller, six-man tag team action against yourself, Sergeant Slaughter, and George the Animal Steel. What's it like being in the ring, and not only just being in the ring with them, but teaming with two of the great legends of pro wrestling?
It's one of those things you see, as I said earlier, it's like, how does this come about, right? I mean, you grow up as a kid sitting home on Saturday and you see Sergeant Slaughter, you see George Steele, and you go to the Garden, you see these guys that, they're working there at the Garden monthly. And now, I'm in a 6-man tag, versus 3 other local guys. And it's, it's interesting. It's crazy. It's just like to your earlier point, you just never know with where life is going to bring you, and just seizing those opportunities and with where there are things that you'll never forget, and they'll come across in your memories that you see, and just wonderful times for I can share with my kids and share with others, and so the wrestling business is full of so many different surprises and opportunities. I think the moral of the story is be prepared.
Yeah. So, backstage etiquette. Let's talk about backstage etiquette. Obviously, it's pretty consistent over the years in pro wrestling. But what have you taught at your schools over the years? As far as backstage etiquette and how to act back there and treat the other individuals.
Kofi Kingston says it's best. It's, as coach would say, what's in your briefcase, and knowing how to conduct yourself, knowing how to interact and communicate, talk with promoters, deal with your peers, being respectful, being with whatever you're being asked to do it to the best of your abilities. You might not like with what's being presented on that particular event. Make the best of it. Just take those opportunities with where, how do I make it with where it's captivating. But moral of the story is just be understanding and be flexible, and just it's not about you. Someone's giving you an opportunity to perform or a platform. Appreciate that and understand that that could be someone else, but someone's trusting you to be in that position. So be respectful and be thankful, and just all those little things that are just really carry a lot of weight for says a lot about you as a person.
And some more stats and highlights for the fans here. WWA 1998, you work with the Headbangers from the World Wrestling Federation on 2 different occasions, Newburyport and Quincy, Massachusetts. Of course, Shotgun Saturday Night, 1998, Lowell, Massachusetts, against Bradshaw. You'd work a WWF House show in Portland, Maine, against Al Snow. So you're consistent with WWF on the road, doing all these shows. When it comes to seminars, in your opinion, how important for our young wrestlers coming up is it to attend these seminars when they get the opportunity?
I think it's very important, not just because we have them. I think that if you can find a seminar with where there's a reputable person that can share insight, even if you take one thing from a seminar that maybe with where the level of understanding wasn't there before you decided to go sit there and participate for 2 or 3 hours, just to kind of help create a level of clarity, both in the ring and outside the ring. And for us, with what promotions or promoters are looking for. So, let's be honest, there's a lot of misinformation in independent wrestling, and to be able to find clarity, because it's a rough road. And if that stuff's not being, brought to the forefront, it can be challenging and can be landmines. And I think with what we've been able to do with our seminars is really create a sense of clarity for the guys and girls that want to come and participate, with where there's vast takeaways both in the ring and out of the ring, from an educational standpoint, that I just think are so important from a growth and development understanding.
Another match you'd go on with World Wrestling Federation Shotgun Saturday Night against Gangrel, the Worcester Centrum Center. NWA New England, another promotion you'd appear for. You teaming up with Mr. USA Tony Atlas against the Brotherhood. Any memories of Tony Atlas in the ring, or the Brotherhood for that hand?
I just refereed a match with Tony Atlas up in Vermont not too long ago, and God bless Tony. I think he's close to 78 years old, I think. Just a character, fun guy to be in the ring with, a lot of laughs. But Tony's Tony and character. And in the Brotherhood was with Eric Sprazier and Knuckles Nelson.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, just 2 fun guys to be in the ring with as well, with Tony Rumble's group, and just all good memories, and just fun stuff.
Third man in the ring, a very important role, the referee, or woman, I should say. Has there been a favorite referee to work with over the years, all the years you've done this?
I got to give kudos to Freddie Spada. I mean, if it wasn't for Freddie, I mean, he's the one that, first gave me the opportunity with WWF way back when, and coming out of school and, saying, hey, there's an opportunity. Would you be interested? And so I always enjoy, his stories and being around him for many years. I like Joey Morella. He was good. Mike Chioda, who I spent time with because when I was on the ring crew, he was, on a different ring crew. We'd always cross paths. Those guys, all great referees. And like I said, Joey Morella.
I want you to expand a little bit about the WWF ring crew. What was that process like? How similar was it to an independent show as far as ring crew goes? But what did it entail? How long does it take? That sort of thing.
It was a two-man show. It was me and Paul Dawson. We had the WWF blue truck, box truck, and traveling from Portland, Maine, all the way up and down the East Coast. Being on the road 2 or 3 weeks at a time, sometimes waking up in the morning and saying, geez, where am I today? Forgetting my luggage one time and trying to getting that ship back to me because I forgot it. So that caught up with me. Just long days, great, a lot of great memories, stories. I could probably write a book. Just different people that you come across, during that duration was always interesting. I thought it really kind of gave me a heads up from behind the scenes. So when I went to transition from doing that to trying to become a talent, I kind of had I had better clarity of the things that were necessary to, be able to survive and learn and understand. And so it really kind of gave me a leg up. And also with where, I became friends with some instrumental people that were, helped me along and teach. And so, fortunate in that respect as well.
And you've excelled in so many different parts of the business. Is there a favorite for you? Do you prefer the in ring? Do you prefer training students? Do you prefer the behind the scenes stuff like ring crew and all those sorts of things? Or what is it for you that really stands out the most?
For me, it's teaching. There's nothing better, Joe, for when I see a guy or girl come to the school, over the years that where I've interacted with so many people and just, I think the other thing is how many people I've seen come and go with where they realize how difficult and challenging it is with what we do. And, unfortunately, it's not for everybody. But for the ones that persevere, there's so many takeaways with where growth, development, seeing one's confidence grow from the first day to with where they're at over a period of 3 to 6 months, having them have their first match and with what that really represents to them and how far they've come. And it's a game changer. And I think, professional wrestling and teaching just really brings the best out of people to, put their best foot forward in so many different ways in everyday life.
So mixing it up just to have a little fun here. A dream match. If you could throw a dream match together, any era, somebody before your time, during your time, somebody coming up now, who would that opponent be?
I would have loved to be able to on a large scale with Hunter. I mean, we got to work at, Kowalski's in ring, back on the training days in the early 90s, but to be able to do that on a larger scale, that would be pretty cool. And then, Coach Bloom. And I think that's the other thing that's really interesting about this piece. 3 Kowalski guys are doing something in the business today that's impacting the betterment of, with what we're doing throughout New England, throughout the country.
Right. And on the other side of that, a Mount Rushmore, chiming in on your inner fan, any era, who would you say is your Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling? Obviously, there's different ways you could look at it. Who made the most money, personal favorites, any way you want to look at it.
Let's see. Well, obviously, I got to go with Walter because I think he played an instrumental part of, with where the business is. There's Bruno. I think, he was fascinating with what he was able to do as well. Modern era. I'd have to say Eddie Guerrero was right up there. I liked him, his in-ring style, Kurt Angle. And I would probably finish off with today, AJ Styles. I think all of those guys bring something unique to the table with where there's something to be said and with what they bring.
BTW, Big Time Wrestling, another promotion you've worked for, against the French Connection, Mr. Tony Roy, Rush. Any memories of them over the years?
I always had a lot of fun working with Tony. A lot of laughs in the ring, just good chemistry. Tony really helped me a lot when I was at Kowalski's, putting stuff together and from a training aspect. And Always a gentleman. Like I said, a lot of fun in the ring, and yeah, good guy, Tony.
Some more stats for the fans here. 1999, WWF Jacked. You'd go one-on-one with Steve Blackman, the Lethal Weapon, at the Fleet Center. One-on-one in Hyannis at the Cape Cod Melody Tent against Thrasher. One half of the Headbangers for a house show. And, of course, WWF Jack, Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn against yourself and Brutal Bob Evans once again at the Fleet Center. You know, being in all these different matches and being in front of the fans, fan interaction. Let's talk about that. So, is there ever a fan interaction that stands out the most over the years, whether it be at a local show or a WWF show, just something that really sticks with the memory to this day?
I think for me, Joe, is walking from where I was at an arena, walking to my car, and there's a father and son, and as you're heading to your car, and the son and the father said, "Hey, I liked your match the most. It looked real. I thought it was real," and being able to kind of create that level of engagement with where we got them, and they felt something unique. I think it was from a performing standpoint is the biggest compliment that you can take from with where they're going to go home and talk about it on Sunday and say, "Dad, can I go back to the wrestling show in 3 weeks?" Because we made such an impression with where they become thirsty for more, and that's the type of stuff that I never that I wouldn't forget.
And are there any other territories outside of New England that you've really appreciated and over the years that you've wrestled in, or even some that you haven't wrestled in that you always wanted to but always admired them?
I think Florida would always be a fun place to work. I've had the opportunity to teach down in Florida, down in the Fort Myers area, but Florida was always a hotbed for professional wrestling. So down there would have been a fun place to go. But like I said, I've had the opportunity to teach down there multiple times. So that's the closest I've come.
If you had to pick three, who would your top three matches or opponents be throughout your career?
Oh, boy. Double J, I really enjoyed working with him. Who else? Perry was challenging. Perry was challenging to work with. And then the other fun guy to work with was my tag team partner, Dukes Dalton, Jim McCarthy. Yes. What a pleasure. Good guy.
And all the accomplishments you've had throughout your career thus far, if you could pick one, whether it be in the ring or behind the scenes, within the industry, your number one favorite moment in pro wrestling, anything stand out for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I think the interesting thing is that there's 4 WWE ID schools throughout the country. And when we started the program, when the WWE started the program, there was 5. And if you look at the lineage of the 3 other schools right now, they're all run by WWE Hall of Famers or owned by WWE Hall of Famers. And then there's Mike Hollow and Scott Reed in Concord, New Hampshire. For some strange reason, Hunter and WWE decided to take 2 local guys in New England and entrust us to work with future WWE superstars at the Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center, which is a huge accomplishment. And it was going on behind the scenes for 2 years and all that stuff. But for Gabe and Hunter and Coach Bloom to trust me and trust Scott to develop future stars is very proud of.
And let's talk about that in detail. Elite Pro Wrestling, TC.com. Get all your details there. For individuals that are looking to get into the wrestling world, this is the place to do it, especially here in New England. If you're based out of New England, even if you're not, worth traveling for. Obviously, a great reputation. You're a fantastic trainer, as many know. So tell us how it got off the ground, how it came to be, and tell us all about the school, what people can expect there.
So I had gotten out of wrestling probably for 2 or 3 years, and then I ended up starting Hollow Stable through Jamie Jimakowski, with where I was just doing small group training sessions. And then I ended up teaching over at a school in Manchester for a little bit because I just wanted to kind of just get out of the house and do something again. And at the time, I was looking for approval. I needed approval for a promo that Kofi Kingston had done for me. And John and Laurinaitis had called me on the phone and said, "Geez, I hear there's a lot of good things going on up in New England. I'd like to come visit and see what you guys are doing up there." But me understanding and knowing WWE and with what they were looking for, knowing with where I was teaching at the time, wasn't going to be cosmetically appealing to them. So, and just for coincidence, Concord, New Hampshire kind of just evolved with where, we've got 6,000 square feet up there. And Scott Reed at the time was teaching at the school in Manchester as well, and said, would you be interested in opening a school there? So I went up and looked at it and I said, geez, this would be perfect. And it's turned out to be a wonderful facility for teaching, 2 rings, green room, media, all the things that you need, a gym, so forth and so on. And then, we reached out to Gabe Sapolsky, and, he came to the school, and just a light must have clicked in his head and said, geez, there's something here. And being able to spend a little time around him, I think that really started the process for the ID program. And, the rest was history. But the school itself, I've just ran 2 camps, one from Canada, and I had an all-females camp. I had people driving, 12, 15 hours to come see us and spend, a weekend with us. And just the takeaways and the learning opportunities for all of them, and with where they're thirsty to come back for more. And, and being part of the WWE ID program is just such a wonderful thing, and just really privileged to be able to do it. And the last guy that got to spend a lot of time with Brad Baylor, who just got called up to NXT. And all those guys and girls are just wonderful as well that have come through, the program that we've had an opportunity to work up there at Elite. So it's been great, Joe. It really has. And like I said, I couldn't be more proud of that WWE trusts 2 local guys from New Hampshire to do with what we do.
And you mentioned, obviously, it's an honor. You mentioned, the WWE ID program. There are only a selected few that do it, and you are one of them. Why don't you just take us back to that very moment where you found out that your school was indeed one of them?
I remember distinctly. I was driving. I was going to work, and the phone rang, and it was Gabe, and he says, "Congratulations, part of the WWE ID program." And it was probably, like I said, the best kept secret for 2 years. And at the time, there was a lot going on with WWE and the company that owns them now behind the scenes. So at one point, they were getting ready to launch the program. And then there was stuff that kind of had come about, and we had to sit on it for another 6 months, and not knowing if it was finally going to come to fruition. And here we are, 2 years in the making, and with another masterclass coming up in March 27th, 28th, and 29th with Gabe to look at up and coming talent. It's been great.
And is this something that, obviously it's not just in ring. If you want to be a referee or ring announcer, any aspect of the business, you can come, of course, to Elite Pro Wrestling.
Absolutely. Managers, referees, ring announcers, we're always looking for, to give people opportunities. We've got girl ring announcers, we've got managers, different referees. It's really a great place for up and coming talent, or even seasoned talent, to come, see with what we're all about and what makes us uniquely different. And I think one of the other things that we do better than most is really being able to give good constructive feedback after matches or training sessions, where we really get into the weeds with what it takes to be, or what it takes to get to the next level, with how we look at things to allow people to just to be in the best place possible for an understanding standpoint, because there's just so much to know.
Yeah. And if there's somebody that's maybe teetering on the fence, they're thinking about getting into the business and they're tuning in now, what's that piece of advice that you have for somebody that's looking to get in?
Believe in yourself. Climb those stairs, walk through that door. You won't regret it. It'll be a game changer. It'll be a life changer. You'll say to yourself, why didn't I do this earlier? The biggest fear is apprehension of not knowing. But once you push past that, and you get around a great group of people that just want to see everybody aspire to greatness, there's nothing better. The brotherhood or the family is just, it's a wonderful thing if you let it be a part of your life.
2013, Fairhaven, Massachusetts. You were inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Any memories from that evening and seeing old faces?
Yeah, it was great. Back to Mr. Jim Kettner, who roasted me a little bit in the beginning, so I appreciated that. And just paying back to the people that really kind of helped me along the way. The Freddie Spartas, the Pat Pattersons, the Walter Kowalskis. If it wasn't for any of those guys, the Jim Kedners, if it wasn't for any of them, I wouldn't be able to do with what I do today. And I can't thank those guys enough. And like I said to you earlier, their motto was just to always make sure you give back for the better, to help people to get to the best place possible.
And you mentioned in passing a book. Will we ever see a Mike Hollow book?
I've had a couple of people ask. It would be interesting, and you never know. At some point, time will tell. But a lot of good stories and a lot of good life lessons and a lot of great takeaways. And there's a lot that you can take from pro wrestling that's been attributed to my everyday personal life, relationships, friends. So it's who knows? Anything's possible.
Yeah. So Elite Pro Wrestling, TC.com. Check it out. If you're somebody looking to get into the pro wrestling world, this is the place to do it. Once again, Elite Pro Wrestling, TC.com, the training center that you want to get to here in New England. Any other feedback you'd like to give to the fans who have supported you over the years?
Just a big thank you. I mean, let's be honest, Joe. If it wasn't for the fans of New England, and who New England is such a hotbed for professional wrestling for over the years, for all the different things that we've been able to put forth with what you're doing, with what I'm doing up in Concord, the shows, the different people that we've been able to come across. The fans have been instrumental with where they're just thirsty for excitement, interactions, all of those things just really continue to help our business thrive for the better. So big thank you to the fans of New England, and thank you for supporting for everything that we do. It's certainly not forgotten.
And obviously right now you still have so much on your plate. You still have so much to give, and years ahead of all kinds of, people coming up in the wrestling world thanks to you. But fast forward many years from now, looking back at your career as a whole, what do you want your legacy to be, and how do you want to be remembered?
I think the big thing is that I was able to put the business in a better place and created a better understanding for the guys and girls that were just thirsty to learn and wanted to make something out of it. And ultimately putting the business in the best place possible for going forward, I think is the big piece for me, because that's such an important thing. I want to be known that I left it in a better place from when I started to with when I left it.
Mike Hollow, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Joe, thank you. It's always an honor. Great. Let's not wait another 20 years like the last time. I'm not sure if the building's there anymore, so we'd have to do it again in the near future. But thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll find a couch somewhere, right?
Yeah, there you go. Thanks,
For
pal.
Mike Hollow and the Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center, and of course, Elite Pro Wrestling TC.com. For Mike Hollow, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you, the fans, what you thought of this interview. And we'll see you all next time.